you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on SUBSTACK. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So, how's everybody doing? Good? Everything is good over here. I know the show's a little bit staggered, but we just went through Thanksgiving or Black Friday. I avoided this. You know what? It's really funny because they're saying, oh, you know, sales, retail sales are not going to be as high. And I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to wait. I had to do some shopping, but I said, I'm going to wait till Sunday. No, none of this. I don't care what they say. Black Friday. I don't really want to be like. So I went Sunday too. I'm not going to say which store, but one that starts with a W and ends with a T. I had to. And it was full. But I was looking around, and you want me to tell you something? It was more crowded because those the shoppers, the ones that you make an order and you pick it up, and they have these big carts and they're wheeling them around and fulfilling the order. Yeah, there were people. It was a Sunday, and I understand, but it was like because they got these big carts in the aisle, and I'm like, sometimes it was like a traffic jam in the aisle, not from regular customers, but from these carts fulfilling people's orders. Something okay, people are thinking. They're thinking. This is of course me making stuff up. They're thinking along the lines, but like I'm not going to go in the store. I'm just going to go and make an order and pick it up. But then people like myself that were actually in there is like, what is this? I'm not kidding. It was like, and then of course in the mix, you've got the people that they have, which are the ones that are stocking the shelves. So you're like, no, 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 not. I would go down the aisle and I'd look at them like, no, let me back out. Let me go around. Like if I wanted to get to the other end of the aisle, I'd be like, let me see if I can find an empty aisle so I can circle around and get in there. I was like, what is this? Anyway, that's just my shopping experience for Black Friday. But yeah, at least down here in Florida, North Florida, where I'm at, people were shopping. I don't know what they were shopping for, but they were shopping. And now what an adventure! I'm telling you, what an adventure! Like if you're, and sometimes I'm thinking to myself, because we all hear, that they're basically trying to a lot of companies are trying to do like the Amazon version of things where you get stuff delivered. But there's times that's not going to cut it. Even if it's next day or 2 days, sometimes you need to go and shop. Plus, believe it or not, this is my psych profile on this. Sometimes it's good to get out there with other human beings. You might think of it, but that social interaction of shopping, grocery shopping, that's good for us. All right. Even if it's just a people watch. Okay. There's people there to watch, believe me. But yeah. And I'm like, well, I can understand if for some reason you're sick or you're housebound or for some reason, mobility is a problem for you and going to the store is like, what? I understand that. I'm not talking, but sometimes I'm looking at this something and, if you're able to do, you should go besides the fact of maybe necessity because I think as humans, since we are social animals, even the introverts, even people that are introverts, it's like you need to be out there. You need to experience life. You need to dodge carts and moving. Like I was like, whoa, no, it's like, hey, this thing that and I guess my point being that I look at this and it's like this is driving us towards isolating ourselves. Like as a matter of fact, the other day, what was it that me and my husband were talking about how once upon a time, and I want to, people loved going to the movies. And I mean, obviously, like even now, I think the conversation had come up where, the blockbusters were usually at the beginning of the summer and then around Christmas time. This was like where they would have already given out the previews when you went to, earlier or whatever part of the year, and like, hey, coming up Christmas, whatever. And everyone's like, oh my God, and they would have all these great movies. And of course, going to the movies was a blast, whether it was your family or your friends, whatever the case might be. And people would look forward to like, oh, this great movie that's coming up or whatever. It's gone. And my point being, because everybody stays home. Everybody stays home and they binge on their programs, or it's just stay home. And part of it, I know you hear, oh, it was getting so expensive to go to the theater between your tickets and the if you ate something like popcorn. I get it. But still, again, it's like we're driven into isolation, um, from different angles, kind of deal. And I don't know how we ended up here, honestly. I haven't been to a theater, I want to say, like in 3 years. And then I will say this in my defense. I haven't been because, I guess, because like everything else, but a lot of the movies that have been coming out in the last few years are crappy. It's like, first of all, this movie will probably be available to me in about 2 to 3 months, maybe, or less, depending. It's not that great. It's like, this is not even worth the money. Like I said, once upon a time, there were blockbusters, what they would call blockbusters, where you would pay the money to go see it. It was like, oh yeah, I got to see that movie. I'll give you an example. I remember when Lord of the Rings came out. It was my son. I have one of my boys. He was a teenager. And he was a Tolkien fan. He had read all the Tolkien books, the Similarian or whatever it is, all the Hobbit books. So remember, once upon a time, the movies would come out at midnight. The midnight showing of the breaking. That was the preview. That was the first movie. I remember going with him and his brother, and we sat there at midnight. It was a packed theater to see the first Lord of the Rings movie. And it was great. Besides the fact that I was with my kids, they were teenagers. I'm saying and I had to get the tickets ahead of time, and I went over there and I bought them, and I don't know what happened between now and then. I don't know. Besides the quality of what's being produced by Hollywood but yep. So there's my 2 cents worth of modern life. So anyway, let's follow that forward a little bit. And that I always look at different stories that are out there. Okay. This is a story that came out on UK. What is it? It's Metro. UK Metro. It's Metro, but it's out of the UK. How's that? It's out of the UK. And basically, it's talking about grief bots, and that they're helping people stay connected with loved ones who have died. We're talking here, of course, AI. Now, basically, it's saying a tech CEO has said the AI world means what is real and what is not real starts to evolve as it changes how people cope with grief by creating chatbots with the personality of departed loved ones. I don't know about you, but do you see a lot of ways that this goes south? But we'll keep going with this, okay? Justin Harrison started You Only Virtual, or YOV, after his mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The company began to preserve this relationship with his mother, building a digital avatar of her known as a persona for after she passed. So in other words, the chatbot's going to look like his mom. But that's the former filmmaker said their grief bots can help with the grieving process and allow people to stay connected with their loved ones in a way that feels more natural. I don't get that part more natural. The AI was trained on text messages and phone calls between Mr. Harrison and his mother while she was alive, alongside using voice memos and videos to capture her voice. A free version of YOB allows access to an AI chatbot similar to ChatGPT, but with a loved one's personality, while a paid version opens up phone calls to bring back someone's voice from the dead. That's wonderful. Mr. Harrison demonstrated one such call, calling the persona to say, "I love you, Mom," to which it replied, "I love you too, sweetheart." Despite the comforting conversations it offers, the technology has been criticized for putting users at risk of over-reliance and dehumanizing the grieving process. That's an understatement. Many have compared the tech to dystopian TV series Black Mirror, where in one episode, a grieving woman uses an app and later an android with the AI-powered personality of her deceased boyfriend. Researchers at Cambridge University have also raised concern that such AI chatbots would be a high-risk pursuit which risks psychological harm for users and disrespect towards the rights of the deceased. But on the need to ensure that grief bots are safe, Mr. Harrison said, "I'm not concerned with people becoming too reliant on the technology," because of course he's going to make money on it. He maintains that there's no such thing as the natural grieving process, so the AI has nothing to disrupt for something so individualized. He added that in the past, people did not have photos, letters, or digital social media to hold on to loved ones, so the tools to help us grieve and stay connected are always changing. What do you think about this? I mean, I know what I think about it. Can't you tell? Uh, I could see so many ways that, there was a movie that Steven Spielberg brought out. Was it AI or artificial intelligence? It was a while back, many years back, where he makes a little android for a lady who had lost her child. And it was kind of like in a similarity. It was like it became like a comfort thing. And eventually, as she progressed in her grieving, the bot had been programmed to just to be with her, to love her like a child. And the aim of the movie was that in other words, she got to the point that the bot was a nuisance, but it was looked like a little kid. It was this kid that I think it was the one that played I See Dead People. I can't remember his name now. But anyway, this is along the same lines where AI and even now we hear a lot of stories of weird psychological problems and the AI, the chatbots giving out of stupid, inaccurate, or dangerous information feedback. Right? But I'm going to say, you could say, well, you know what? Some of those people had psychological problems to begin with. Okay. But I'll tell you what, I think that a grieving human being, no mental illness involved in this. This is at the point that they are the most vulnerable. Right. And I could see where they could say, well, I'm going to rely on this, but I could see so many things going wrong with this as far as letting this person move on through the grieving process. Can you imagine you lost a loved one, but you can still get phone calls that sound like this person saying, "I love you," or "I want to see you," or "How's everything going?" Remember, they basically feed it um, information. In other words, to personalize it. How's that? To personalize it. So I don't know. What do you think? I think that there's the possibilities of what could go wrong outweigh any positive aspect to it. Same thing. Let's say they say, okay, well, you know what? We're going to allow a person to use this bot for maybe the first 2 months after somebody passed, whatever, 3 months, 1 month. If somebody gets used to this, do you think they're going to want to let go? By the way, if you talk to some psychic mediums that have, not all the time, but have certain people come to them and say, hey, I want to contact this person that passed away. Usually, of course, it's somebody close to them. They on occasion have told me, yeah, there's times that they have to start turning the people away because they want to, in other words, continue the relationship, even though that person is deceased. They whatever, because the psychic connection is their only. This is not like a one-time thing. Oh, are you okay? No. they get on this hamster wheel of wanting to go back and communicate and almost like continue the relationship, even though one of them is deceased. Which, by the way, this is what a lot of psychic mediums that are more con men, then they can fleece people for a lot of money because of that. As people get so desperate, then and that's as a matter of fact, let's travel back. This is when Houdini was trying to basically expose spiritualism and these mediums. By the way, there was a lot of mediums that were legit, but there was a lot of them that he was trying to unmask because they were stringing people along for money, a lot of money, by the way, that either one time or come back every week or one of those deals. So yeah, I could see this going south. Send me a comment on what you think. Now let's get on to the good part. The good part is, who is the guest today? He's been here before. His name is Robert Gallo, and he's a renowned magician, and he's the head of a fearless team of ghost hunters, which are made up of his family, Renee, Nikki, and Courtney. And what they do is they go to all these different haunted sites across America. They have a paranormal web series that they established back in 1990, right? And as a matter of fact, I got to ask him, because he told me he's going to have a podcast coming up, but help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Bobbie?
Okay. There I am. I'm big. I'm doing good. I loved your monologue. There was so many things that you said in the monologue that I would definitely agree with, and some interesting things going on today for sure. And I
Let
noticed,
me ask you something. Do you see? And I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
yeah,
Considering that we work in the paranormal field, which
yes,
is dead people, all right.
correct.
So, do you see where down the line this could like become problematic, where people rely on something like this?
I think the reason that this is becoming a thing at all
Mm-hmm.
is because of how secular society has
Yes.
become.
Yes.
Because if you live in a secular society, you don't believe in the afterlife, you don't believe in God, you don't believe in the hereafter. So they're grasping for things to simulate that when it already exists. So I mean, all they really need to do is just allow themselves to become a little bit more spiritual, and you're not going to need an AI to do what the AI wants to do. But you have these atheists, and they're and these kids are growing up, atheists and non-believers, and everything in between, and so this is their only hope of some type of an afterlife is a fake one. let's
Well, you
let's
know what I also think is that it's like, I hate to say this, but and I know that people are going to be going, "Oh, Marlene." I think newer generations don't want to deal with pain.
No,
They want to go pain light, and the grieving, that's a human condition where you're going to lose
correct.
somebody very close to you, and sometimes in a heartbreaking circumstances, or and but everybody has gone through that. The bitterness maybe at the beginning, and the
Right,
time that maybe it takes for it to like go away or lessen, and they don't want that. They don't want that. They
right.
want to. I want to like keep it like a lessen it, and it's like, to me it's like, okay, what point are you really going to come to terms that maybe what you're listening to or seeing or whatever is not really that person? Do you think people? I just feel like people can become dependent on it very, very easily.
Well, it's simply not that person, period.
Right? Exactly.
And it doesn't matter how much it looks like the person, how much it sounds like the person, because eventually what's going to happen is people are going to start going to this AI thing for advice, and it's going to end
Yes.
up giving them advice that their mother never would have given them
Sure.
otherwise.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, it's they're going to go right down the rabbit hole, and it's really going to be, and what's going to happen when this thing malfunctions and or
Yeah.
says something that comes out of left field that they don't want to hear. It's just, and is that going to affect the memories that they had of their mother, or I don't know. It's definitely, there's a lot of
Can you
problems here.
imagine? And I want you, because I've recently these stories have come out. So some of these chatbots, basically, can you imagine you're telling this bot, "Oh, I'm so sad, I'm so unhappy," blah, blah, blah. Oh, maybe you can just do away with yourself. Did you know that there have been cases, incidents where some of these bots
Yeah, yeah,
have told people to do away with themselves?
people already becoming addicted to some of these AI bots, and
Hmm.
there have been stories where they're treating them like real people.
Right.
And there's also been stories, to your point, where these AI bots are giving them really bad advice and really bad information because
Yes.
they don't know everything. What these AI bots do is they basically scour the pool of information that's already out there,
Mhm.
which is the internet, and
Right.
then with lightning speed, they assemble it all and they spit it back out at you.
Yes.
Sometimes it's great. Like sometimes if I'm looking for a title to a video
Yeah.
or something for a description, they're great for that because
Hmm.
you could tweak it, until you get what you want. But you really need to be careful. You really need to be careful.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And
especially people, and as well as I do, some people aren't in good mental states,
no, no.
and this could be really bad. Now, if people want to contact their deceased relative, like you said, there are legit psychic mediums out
Hmm.
there. And at least you're
Yes.
perpetuating that human contact. And yeah,
Exactly.
I've always said there's three types of psychic mediums. There's the real ones, the ones that want to be real, and the ones that think they're real. So
That's great. That's excellent.
so you have to be very discerning
Yes.
and maybe know somebody who knows somebody,
Yes.
because that's a field out there that a lot of people I know want to be psychic mediums, and
Yes.
they they go out there and they just start doing gallery readings, and I'm like, when did you become a psychic medium? I have friends like that.
Yes.
I'm like, and obviously it goes horribly, and they stop doing it, and
Yeah.
but I do know some that are life changing. Like one, and the reason I got back into paranormal after years and years of a hiatus was because of a psychic medium. So,
What happened?
well, what happened was my father had passed away from cancer in 1983, and for years and years and years after he passed, I would have these vivid dreams of him still being alive, but he was in this cancerous, emaciated state, and he
Wow.
uh it was just very unnerving, unsettling. And I had it for years, to the point where the one time I never told anybody about this. And one time I did confide in my mother, who was still alive back then. And she says, maybe you should go for some kind of counseling. Maybe it's something. So I said, yeah, I was really considering it, but I never did. And the dreams continued. And then fast forward about a decade after that, I was down in the Carolinas with my family. That's where we were living at the time, and I got a phone call from my sister-in-law, and she was in New Jersey, and she said, Bobbie, she goes, are you sitting down? I got to talk to you. I said, okay, Jill. Her name was Jill. I said, what's going on? She goes, I just sat for a psychic reading. I said, oh, that's great. She goes, yeah, this woman was just unbelievable. And she said, right in the middle of the reading, she stopped and she said, do you know of Vince? And my sister-in-law said, yeah, that's I have a husband named Vince, but I also have a father-in-law who passed years ago whose name was also Vince. And she goes, the Vince the senior, Vince the one who passed, yes, that's the one. He needs to get a message to Bobbie. She goes,
Wow.
you know a Bobbie? She goes, yeah, it's my brother-in-law. Every time I tell this, I gotta take a deep breath. She goes, tell him I don't look like that anymore.
What?
Tell him that I'm young again.
Because you had that memory.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
I dropped the phone. I couldn't speak. And it was at that moment, and I had investigated years earlier as a paranormal investigator, and I
Mhm.
stopped and I said, but nothing I ever experienced
Yes.
confirmed the afterlife as that moment did.
Right. This was
And I
somebody that
said,
didn't know you.
son of a gun, this is real. I can't. I just nobody knew this except my mom kind of knew, but she never said anything to anybody.
Right.
She goes, I said nobody could have known this. How did she know this? And how did she know the exact same thing, the exact thing to say that was gonna? I knew it immediately what she was talking
Right,
about.
right. What they call that confirmation that this
Yeah.
person, like you said, couldn't have scoured the internet and found
No,
this
there was
information.
nowhere she could have gotten this information. And
Yes.
her name was Sylvia Rossi,
Okay.
and I actually interviewed her for my second book. When
Okay.
I spoke to her and told her the story, because she'll even admit she's just the messenger.
Right.
She just relays the information. When I told, she'd had no idea the impact of what she did and what she said and what she revealed. When I told her the backstory, she couldn't believe it, and she was the medium. And she goes, "Wow." She goes, "I'm stunned." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You changed my life." I went
Can you
back and
imagine? I imagine there's maybe how many times she might have said something, and at least she was able to find out that she was
right,
accurate.
yeah, yeah. That's called evidential mediumship, where they give you actual evidence. And
Right.
this to me was concrete evidence. There's no way this. And you know what? If you talk to people that go to certain mediums, this happens over and over. This is not like, for me, it's not exclusive. This is very common. These people have
Yes.
a relationship with the other side. They're able to
Yes.
pierce that veil. Um, and she never wanted to do this. She said, "I didn't choose this career. This career chose me." She's got
Yes.
a master's degree and everything, and she ended up not using any of that. And those are the people you want, because
Yes.
those are the real ones.
Right. I didn't get it. It's like no, I wasn't. I didn't go into it to make money. How's that?
Right.
This wasn't my career path. Like I'm gonna no. Like basically, you're dragged into it one way or another
Yep.
because you have an ability. And in this case, like what you said, like your dad came in and started inserting himself. Like she could. What you hear from a really good psychic mediums that they say sometimes you'll get feedback that you're thinking this doesn't make sense. Who's this person or what are they saying? And some of them have learned after a while just say it because you never know
Right.
who it's meant for.
Right. And I mean, a lot of things have happened since the last time I was on the show. I mean, it's been a
Mhm.
minute.
Yes, yes, yes.
I had a near death experience since the
What
last
happened?
time
What happened?
I was on the show. Um, and here's another one, another one of those experiences that just solidify it for me. I was having pains, not in my chest, but a little bit lower. And I went to the emergency room 3 times, and then who was supposed to be the top gastroenterologist in New Jersey to figure out what was going on with me, and they all diagnosed me with GERD,
Yes,
reflux.
I know what bird is. Yes.
Well, I was watching what I was eating, everything, and one night I had another attack, and these attacks would last for hours. And this one was the worst yet. And I said to my wife, I said, "Honey," I said, "I hate to do this to you." I said, "I got to go to the emergency room one more time. It's really bad." I said, "This is not GERD." So we went there, and young doctor just graduated, gives me an ultrasound, and he goes, "It's your gallbladder." He goes, "You got gallstones." He goes, your gallbladder looks like a bag of marbles." He goes, "You
Wow.
got so many." He goes, "And that's what these attacks are. You're passing stones." And I
Yes.
I looked at him and I said, I want it out. He goes, he because I couldn't take these attacks anymore. They were just
Right.
unbelievably painful. So he goes, "Okay, you're not going to go anywhere. We're going to leave you overnight. We're going to get a doctor. We're going to get it out." So he gets it out. They get it out. I think everything's fine. So the nurse comes in, doctor comes in after the surgery, and they go, "Your belly bilirubin levels are rising."
Hmm.
And what had happened was a rogue stone got out during the procedure and was
Yeah.
blocking one of my bile ducts, and I was going into septic shock.
Ooh.
And which, if nobody knows, what happens is your body poisons itself. And it's actually a very peaceful way to go, because you pretty much go to sleep and never wake up again. And I was very, very, very woozy. And they're scrambling around and said, "We got to get you into a second surgery. We got to get this thing out." They all leave the room, and I'm very, very woozy. And all of a sudden, I open up my eyes, and there's my dad standing at the foot of the bed. And he was wearing a white suit, which was very uncharacteristic of him. He never did that, but he was
Okay.
wearing a white suit, and he was around him what looked like a portal, almost like a cloud-like portal around
Mhm.
him. And he looked at me and he said very pointedly, "Are you ready to go?" And I said to him, I said, "No, Dad." I said, "My kids still need me." And he looked at me. He looked disappointed, and he said, "I understand." He turned around and he was gone, just like that. And I firmly believe that if I said yes,
Yes. That's
that
it.
would have been it.
It would have come back and
I would have, the doctors would have came in, I would have been out, and that would have been done. I'd be done.
mhm.
And it was just a very powerful moment. And I told my wife, when I told my wife, I says, honey, maybe it was the drugs, maybe it was because I'm woozy. She goes, no. She goes, that was meant to happen. She goes, why
Yes.
would you make that up? Why would your brain even make that up at that time? Because I wasn't thinking about dying or anything like that. I was just
Right,
woozy.
right. You're just thinking they're gonna get this stone out and that's it.
And that's it. I didn't think I was going to open my eyes and there was going to be my dad. You know,
Exactly. Right, right, right. It's not like I mean this exactly. I know what you mean. Like there was nothing that you were just waiting for them to come and get you and roll you in and do whatever they were gonna need to do.
right, right.
You know what's really funny is like you how many times, Bobbie, had you gone to the ER before they actually realized what was going on?
That was crazy. You would believe me. It was crazy
But
how
then you
so
get
many doctors,
a new graduate.
yeah, how could so many doctors
Yeah.
get it wrong?
I used to work with this guy who would tell me, as a matter of fact, I'll never forget, he was from this place called Tonawanda. Was it New York, New Jersey, or something like that? I never forgot that name. I was like, where are you from? But anyway, he would tell me, he goes, my mom always reminds me that doctors are practicing medicine. They don't know
That's
anything, they're
right.
just practicing it. And
That's
I
right.
never forgot that.
That's
Um,
right.
but then I'm thinking to myself, but see, and this is the thing. Usually you think, these doctors that have been doing, working, especially in either an ER or something, they have that experience that sometimes you don't even get in a book. Like, hey, I've seen this symptom before,
Yep.
or that, or
Yep.
this could be this, but it could also be that. Let's find out, right? And it's like, no, nobody thinks of that. But then you get the one guy who's new,
Yep.
and
They
it's
knew right
like,
away.
and he right, and he just went directly to it. And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, all right.
Yep.
Sometimes, and I hate to say it, and I'm gonna, you're sometimes a person in a scenario like this, where we're talking ER, your life can hang in the balance just depending on who is it that attends you.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, you happen to get the right person, and especially if there's a question of time, like how quickly can we do this? And then there's others that, well, we need to run a lot of tests, and I think, yeah, sometimes I think our life hangs in the balance. I'll say something. My cousin, she was a nurse for like 35, 40 years. A good portion of it, she was an ER nurse.
Mm.
She would tell me, she goes, don't ever go to the hospital. Stay out of the hospital. Don't ever go into a hospital. She was like adamant about this. She goes, hospital's not a good place to be. Like, if you don't have to, don't ever go to the hospital. I was like, thanks. But yeah, and she was there. She's in other words, she saw
Right.
a lot of things throughout the years, and yeah, and I think that that's part of it. Uh, when Let me ask you, when you decided to go back into paranormal work, do you think that you were more, because it almost seems like after you had that experience with your dad, you were more of a believer in the afterlife, maybe? When you decided to go back into paranormal
Um,
work, or
y-
how did that affect the way when you were going out there?
Here's the thing. I've always believed, but when things like this happen, it's just confirmation. It's just
Right.
one more piece of confirmation. And we all have doubts. And a lot of people say that a lot of the work we do as paranormal investigators, we're doing because we're trying to confirm what we want to believe is true. And you know what? I'm not going to deny that. I think
Yes.
there's a lot of truth to that. I do want to believe there's an afterlife. I do want to believe I'm going to see my mom and my dad again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when I pass, I want to know that I'm going to see my kids again.
Sure.
But I don't think that disqualifies us from being investigators, and I don't think that makes the evidence that we gather any less compelling or any less real.
Right. And
Because
that's the thing.
scientists,
You had no proof. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is, when you go out and let's say you do paranormal work, you're hoping you're going to find some type of proof, photograph. But
right,
for you, that experience was like, I didn't capture any proof. I didn't get a recording, but I know what I know, what I saw.
right, what I know, what I saw. I know what I
That's it.
saw. I know what the medium conveyed. And
Yes.
that's just one aspect of the paranormal. I mean, mediumship and psychic abilities, that's one aspect of the paranormal. What we
Yes.
do as ghost hunters is another aspect of the paranormal. Near death experience, that is a completely separate third.
Yes.
I mean, there's just
Mhm.
volumes and volumes of books, scientifically based books, just on near death experience. You
Yes.
put
Yes.
all of these together, you come up with a really cohesive pool of evidence that's really hard to deny. Klaus Heinemann,
Yes.
PhD, who wrote the Orb Project, um, he calls it statistical impossibility that there isn't a supernatural element to this. He said there's too much evidence to
Yes.
to to dismiss it. And sure, is everything paranormal? No.
Of
Is
course not.
everything
No.
supernatural? No. There is a lot of pareidolia, which is when, pareidolia is when you see faces in the clouds. And, a lot of people will see things in pictures and think it's paranormal when it's not.
Mhm.
I'm an orb guy. I believe in paranormal orbs, but some orbs and pictures are lens flare. Some,
Yes.
however, are not. You have to know what to look for. But to say that all of it since the beginning of time, because remember now, folks, people have been having paranormal experiences for literally since the beginning of humanity. It's
Yes.
like forever. You can't
Yes.
dismiss all of that.
No. No. And it's really funny because sometimes, despite what people think, sometimes people have this one paranormal experience. It's a once in a lifetime thing.
Right,
Something they see or something happens, and they never have it again or before. And they weren't looking to have it. How's that? They
right.
weren't ghost hunting. They weren't doing anything. It just happens to them.
Well, I would submit to you that they have a lot more. They just chalk it up to
Well,
something else.
yeah, no, they, especially if they're not really keen on, like,
Right, right.
not what I
Now,
want to.
there are people now people need to understand something. When you talk to a scientist or somebody who's a diehard skeptic, a lot of times they're suffering from something called phasmophobia or spectrophobia. And that
Okay.
is fear of ghosts. There
Yes.
is a fear of the afterlife. There's a fear of God. There's some people have these phobias where they don't want to believe. To them,
Yes.
oblivion is preferable to the thought
Yes.
of going on after we die. And I've
Right.
spoken to these people. And I've interviewed some of these people, and some of them have come clean to me. Some of them say, I am absolutely terrified at the thought of being a discarnate spirit that has no form. I'm that just wigs them out completely.
Yes.
And I say, no, you'll have a form. It's a ball about that big. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Oh, that made me feel so much better now, right?
Exactly. No, but I'm kidding. Um, but I look at to me the afterlife exists and people go, well, how is there evidence, how can you prove it? I said, look it, there's a difference between evidence and proof. Now,
Yes.
proof is something that happens underneath a microscope
Hmm.
and in a petri dish, and we can't do that right now because we're
Yes.
looking at non-physical form.
Yes.
And they go, well, how do you know non physical form exists? I said, well, scientists tell us that dark energy exists, that dark matter exists in the universe. In fact, they say it makes up 95% of the universe. But guess what? They can't see it, they can't measure it, They have no way of quantifying it, but yet
Right.
they'll tell you that exists.
In a laboratory, right? There's no that they can say we're going to reproduce the dark matter in a lab,
They
and
can't
this
do
is
it.
how you do it. No, they can't
Nope.
do it.
Nope. Now, we have evidence though, and we have enough evidence to prove it in in a court of law. In fact, there's legit haunted houses that were confirmed in a court of law to be haunted. This is not a joke. You can Google this. One in New
Okay.
York is a notable case.
Which one? Which one?
I believe it's in Nyack, but I'm not sure. But I would Google that. Just if you just Google,
Is it like a historical house, like a
yes,
historical
yes,
place?
yes.
I'm just. It's not the Jumo Mansion, is it?
I can't. I really can't. I don't
I don't
remember
know.
off
I'm
the
not that
top of my
familiar. I'm
head.
not from the Northeast,
Yeah,
so I'm just going back on the ones that I can think of that are like have
right.
been around for a long time. But anyway, keep going.
Well, what kind of evidence do we have? Well, the first one would be anecdotal, and that's what
Hmm.
you see a ghost.
Right.
Me seeing my father in that near death experience was anecdotal. That happens all the time. So, but that's an eyewitness account. And does an eyewitness testimony count for something in a court of law? Of course it does. It's evidence.
Yes.
Matter of fact, it's the strongest form of evidence in a court of law. But we don't stop there. We have photographic evidence. We have audio evidence in the form of EVP. We have ITC. What does ITC stand for? Instrumental transcommunication. We have pieces of equipment. In fact, I'm going to hold one up right now. This right here. This was custom made for me by Nigel Mortimer in the UK, and this is
Okay.
a spirit portal. And we could communicate with spirits through this device.
Okay.
And we also have one called the ghost meter, which we use on a lot of our episodes, which is a yes and no
Okay.
instrument. And if these things didn't work, we couldn't get relevant answers to questions, and we do
Okay.
all the time.
Yes.
And so, is all of it a spirit? No, I don't think all of it is. But there are times when they do come through and give us the right answers, and those are the ones that we have to look at.
Right. The intelligent that it corresponds to what you asked.
Yep. And you were talking about AI during your monologue. I
Yes.
actually used AI to figure something out. In my first book, Family Spirits, which is this one right here, that's my
Okay.
first book. I actually have a picture of my youngest daughter, Courtney, summoning an orb. And she
Okay.
does it. And we snapped the picture as soon as she summoned it. And there it was. Now, people could say, well, that's a coincidence. So I asked AI, what was what would be the odds of that happening, of her summoning it, and if it was a dust particle, it appearing in the camera lens at the exact same time she wanted it to appear, and it was like some astronomical thing, like one in like a million. Okay,
Wow.
but that's not all, because we did it twice, two in a row, and the orb was in the exact same spot again. I said to
Okay.
AI, I said, what are the odds of that happening twice in a row? You know what the AI came up with? The mathematical calculation? 1 in 1 trillion.
What? Yes. It's
In
incredible.
other words, a statistical impossibility.
Possibility.
That, folks, was a paranormal occurrence.
Where was it? What location was it that she did
It
that
was
at?
when we were in the South, it was in our backyard. We were doing something called the orb experiment that's
Oh, so you
outlined.
were this this is in your own backyard?
Yeah, we planned that we were going to try to do this thing
I
called an orb
lost you.
experiment that was outlined in the book The Orb Project by Dr. Klaus
I can't
Heinemann.
hear you.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yep. Can you hear me?
Okay, all of a sudden you cut out on me. Say
Testing,
something.
testing, testing, testing.
No, nothing. See what we were talking about? Okay. Let me. No, no, no. It doesn't show you're muted.
I'm not. Let me go out and come
Tell you
back
what.
in.
Let me see if I can. I'll just put. Let me see something. Yeah, let me put some. Let me see if it's. I don't think. Let me see because normally if it was my headset, you could not hear me. But let's see. Um,
Testing.
hold on.
Testing, 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 testing,
Can you
test.
hear that?
Yep.
Okay. So I have a feeling it might be on your end, Bobbie.
Give me 1 minute.
Okay. We were before we started rolling, weird stuff was happening, and my camera all of a sudden went away, even though I had already set up. And it was funny because before we started recording, here we go. Let's see.
Testing, testing, testing.
Now, yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yep.
I'm
It's
telling
what we said.
you,
Yep.
we were having that conversation.
They don't want you to know this.
That thing about that, I said, "Oh, in your backyard," and all of a sudden, that's it. Whatever that was, it was like, whoop,
That's right.
for no reason.
Right.
No reason. There
Right.
was nothing. You didn't hit a button. Nothing.
And I'm looking at the little audio meter right here on StreamYard, and it's registering.
Right. Exactly. It's not that it doesn't have access to your microphone.
Right.
That's. I was saying when you left it, I was saying that we were talking about this before we started recording. How sometimes weird stuff happens.
Yep.
And it's kind of like some type of paranormal sabotage for equipment for no reason whatsoever. Just decides to like not work.
Well, I won't talk
crashes.
about the orb project anymore. Okay, so we won't.
like that's not tested theory,
Anybody
right?
listening? Okay, I'll stop that train of thought.
Yes.
But you can read about it in my book.
There you go. Well, and that's happened. That's happened to me interviewing other guests where everything is fine, and then a certain subject comes up, and it's like, what happened? And then they'll tell me, and I hate to say this, but a lot of times my guests have something to do with either exorcism or possession or stuff along those lines. Not all the time, but many of the times I want to say, and they'll tell me, "Oh no, this happens all the time." It's like, okay, thanks, but yes, yeah. Then you can tell, well, this is not as coincidental as it appears.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is I'm looking everywhere and I don't see any problems like on my end. I don't know what I
Yeah,
just.
you were there one time. All of a sudden, that's it. And I was like, okay, is it me? No, I'm not. And and I'll tell you what. After this, I've got my TV over here in front of me, and I went and I put on some Gregorian chants. Okay, it's like, all right, let's see. But you know what? Once you've been doing this for what 30? No, 35 years, something like that.
Yeah. My first investigation was in 1989. That was a brief one, but then I did one in 1990 that to this day is considered a landmark investigation. In fact, there's a magazine called Weird New Jersey, which is very, very
Yes.
popular.
Yes.
It's like a cult magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have Weird Pennsylvania, Weird New York, Weird, all kinds of weirdness. Yes. And they reached out to me just a few years ago and they did a 5-page spread on that investigation because it was very, very, it was landmark investigation. And 20 years later, we actually did a follow-up in that same location with the same investigators. But the thing was, I took a hiatus between the early ones in the 90s and then when I had my family. And the reason I got back into it was A, the psychic medium, the Sylvia Rossi revelation, and B, my family, my 2 kids who were young at the time were fascinated with that with Ghost Adventures, which had just started airing. They were just, they loved that show. Yes. And I told them, I said, kid, Daddy used to do that way before these guys.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Exactly.
That was it. That I became a superhero and they wanted to go. And these are 2 young girls and they were not afraid. And what I found out when we started ghost hunting was that they all had psychic gifts. They were all very good at different things. Like my oldest, Nicolette, she was an empath. So she could sense the ghosts. She was very, very, and like sometimes to a point that was very uncomfortable because We had one episode that was very dark, that they were taunting her, and they were actually taunting her about one of her friends that had just taken her own life,
Oh,
like not that long before, and it was happening through the equipment, and giving her the messages, the relevancy.
okay.
And then my youngest daughter, Courtney, she was the orb queen. She could summon orbs, she could see orbs, and we would take pictures, and they'd be surrounding her, sometimes surrounding her head like a halo. And if she had a
Wow.
piece of equipment that she was using, that
Hmm.
you would see them interacting with the equipment, the orb. It was
Right.
crazy. And my wife, I got her a pair of dowsing rods. She picked them up like she was using them her entire life. She
Okay.
wouldn't move a muscle. Those things would react on command, communicating with spirits.
Okay.
So we ended up going all over the country into some of the most haunted locations imaginable. And some of the evidence we got was just simply mind blowing.
What do you
Um,
consider one of the most haunted places that you've gone, since you've gone through so many?
Most haunted place I have ever investigated to this day was a small cemetery in Fort Mill, South Carolina, called the Old Unity Cemetery.
Okay.
And every time we would go there, the place would just light up. But I would say, and I'm looking in my book right now because I'm going to show it on camera. Probably
Okay.
this is in a different cemetery. This was caught in a privately owned cemetery
Okay.
that we got permission to investigate, that had a reputation for being haunted.
Right.
And as soon as we went in there, um, we were getting all kinds of activity, and my wife asked through the rods if it would allow us to take a picture.
Okay.
So the spirit said yes. So I told my oldest, Nikki G, I said, start taking pictures. He's going to show himself. So she starts to take the pictures, and she sees it through the LCD viewfinder on the camera, because we were taking infrared shots, so we couldn't see with our naked eye. She saw with through the LCD, and she saw it starting to form. And as it's forming, she's going, Dad, you got to see this. This is unbelievable. And I'm trying to be Mr. Professional. I'm saying, no, honey, don't worry. We'll do evidence review later. She's like, no, you got to see this now. And we had a series of shots. This thing went from an orb to an ectoplasm cloud to a full body apparition.
Wow.
And here it is. I'm going to show it on camera. You're going to see that picture on the right hand
Yes.
side. That's my back, which is my better side. And in the foreground, you can see my wife. And on the
Uh-huh.
left hand side, that's a ghost.
Are you serious?
Yep. He's
But that
wearing it.
looks
Yep. He's wearing a cloak. You can see the head. That is a full body apparition. And my daughter, who was taking that, could see it. We could not.
in other words, you saw it after when you looked at the picture.
Yes. Yeah. She was able to see it through the camera lens. And after she took the picture, obviously we reviewed it and we could see it.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
he was standing right next to me.
Just out of curiosity, do you think he belonged to any of
Oh, we
the
know exactly
greats?
who he
Oh,
was.
you did? Who is
Oh,
he?
yeah. His name was Thomas Sprott. Now, Thomas Sprott was actually an unsung hero during the Revolutionary War. He was friends with King Hagler, who was a Catawba chief, Indian chief, and he helped defend the Catawbas against the Shawnee because they were at war. In
Okay.
return, the Catawba helped us repel Lord Cornwallis because he was on his march toward Charlotte. So
Okay.
Thomas Sprott was buried in that cemetery. The family still owns that land, which their name is now Spratt, but
Okay.
originally it was Sprott.
Right.
And that was him, because we asked and we confirmed it. That was him who appeared next to us.
So in other words, that's how old that cemetery was. It went back.
Oh, it's very, very old. If you go to our channel, you can see the entire investigation from start to finish.
Okay.
and it's called The
Okay.
Hidden Grave of Thomas Sprott. And it is one of our most viewed. I mean, we got 24,000 views on that, something like that. It's got a lot of views on it, but it is. And whenever people say, if I go to, because we have we ton of content on our channel, and
Uh
people
huh.
go, if I could just watch one thing, what would it be? I always point them towards that one. I said, this is the one you want to watch, because from start to
Okay.
finish, stuff is happening, and it's undeniable. It's like it gets you get to the point where you're like, well, this can't all be coincidence. This can't all be equipment malfunctioning or little glitches here. I mean, it's just a constant stream of evidence.
Was there something unsettling as towards the end of his life? Why do you think he was still hanging out, or what happened? Was there anything that happened with him?
See, that's a good question, and we really don't know the answer to that, because I will tell you this: before we investigated, the reason we investigated is because
Uh huh.
that small cemetery had a reputation for being haunted, but
Okay.
nobody could get on it because it was on private land. So I literally
Uh.
went to the family to get
Mm-hmm.
permission to investigate. Unfortunately, folks, just to let you guys know, it is now fenced off today, probably because of us. Because these paranormal investigators get wind of something and they're off
Yes.
trespassing,
Yes.
and we don't
Yes.
do that. We never trespass.
Of course not. And you know what? Where I live is rural, and I know what you mean because usually when you go to more urban centers, they have the cemetery, the city cemetery, like you said, it's fenced and it's a big cemetery. But out here where I live at, you can go down the street, you turn, and that's it. The grave's right there next to the sidewalk.
Right.
You have a lot of little family cemeteries. Or even now, the more modern ones, but they're right there everywhere you go around here. You
Yep.
turn a corner, and there's a cemetery. Or back there, look, there's a cemetery. Yeah.
This, folks, is the actual camera we use to capture that full body apparition. Unfortunately, they don't make these anymore. This is a Bell and Howell S7 Slim. You can
Mm-hmm.
see those little lights around the lens. Those are infrared lights.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
didn't know that they made that.
they don't
The infrared.
anymore. Unfortunately, I wish they still did. I'd buy 100 of these if they still made them. I'm not kidding. Because to me, everybody goes, "What's your favorite piece of equipment?" Well, folks, that's it right there.
Yeah.
That's it right
Well,
there.
that's what the thing. I want to say. Once upon a time, where you had to pay to develop film, that before it went digital. In other words,
Right.
there was a lot of. I mean, that when you captured, how's not this? How's this? When you actually had a camera to take pictures, you got much better results as far as what you captured on there.
There's a reason for that. And again, I'm going to go back to Dr. Klaus Heinemann in the OR Project because he talks about this. He also just recently wrote a new book called Phenomenon. This guy's a NASA scientist, by the way, who's into the
Okay.
paranormal. But he says it's because, and newer cameras now are no good at capturing the paranormal because what they're
Right.
doing is they're adding features that filter out anomaly. Well, it's the anomaly
Yes.
we're looking for. these
Exactly.
these spirits come in the form of anomaly. So when you
Hmm.
filter those anomaly out, you're actually filtering your evidence out. So the older cameras, because of the charge plates in the camera, the older ones
Yes.
work better. So try to go on eBay, try to find um, an older digital camera, uh, probably about at this point at least 10 years old.
Yeah. I have my Nikon. Is from that time period. I
Those
still
are the
have it
best
there.
ones for capturing
Yeah.
because cell phones are not good. They
No, I
used
mean
to be
that's
good.
convenient, but not really. Not if you're really going to get something that you want that's worthwhile.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I don't know. There was just something about it, and that's another thing that nowadays. Let's face it. I think also there's fear of what they call the deep fakes.
Oh,
So
yeah. See, oh, wow. We can get into that too.
yes.
You're absolutely right. Here's the problem with AI, and here's the
Hmm.
problem with the deep fakes, as you correctly called them. You don't know who to trust anymore.
Yes.
So I've gotten to the point now where the only evidence I even believe is my own, which really stinks. Which really
Yeah.
stinks. Now, people
Yes.
who know me, they believe my evidence. So
Right.
this is what I will tell people out there that are looking for a good read and solid evidence. I can give all I can do, folks, is give you my word. But I will tell you this: that anything that you read in this book, Family Spirits, and our follow up book, Family Spirits 2, is
Right.
100% genuine. We fake nothing. So, and oh, and by the way, I'm just going to hold up this one. This just came out. This is not my book, but I am a contributor to it. It's called Help Me, I'm Haunted by Father Sean Whittington and Annette Munich. And it's a very dark book, folks. It's about the dark side of the paranormal. Um,
Yes.
but I am a
I've interviewed
contributor.
Sean several times. As a matter of fact, he wrote the forward to one of my books as well.
He's one of my favorite people.
Yes. Yes.
He's
Yeah.
he's a priest now, you know.
Yes. 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 Oh
Yes,
yeah.
he's Father Sean now.
Father Sean. But you know what? And he talked to me like pre priest. How's that? Pre his
Yeah.
life and everything, and even the experiences he had when he was younger. Even with his family and everything, and yeah, it's very interesting. But yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and I don't know yet. The last time I haven't spoken to, I remember he even had like I think a room in his house where he was like me and my wife try to stay out of there. There's something about that one room, considering what he's, and that's another thing because you know that he the exorcism or stuff like that, it makes you a target at the same time because he's not just like you could say, well, a paranormal investigator. He doesn't. That's not really his angle, if you want to call it that.
No, no. And again, this is I don't know how, and that's the one thing about me. I mean, if you go into these paranormal circles and all these people that are ghost hunters, they view the paranormal through a single lens, and they do
Hmm.
everything one way. Me, I'm not only a paranormal investigator, I am into the NDEs, not only because I had one, I was into
Right,
them before that.
right.
I'm into the psychic mediumships. I'm not a psychic myself, but I do like to study that. And I'm also into the spiritual side. I am a Roman Catholic.
Yes,
And if anybody knows anything about the Roman Catholic Church, there's so much mysticism in the
yes.
Roman Catholic Church that'll keep you busy forever. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you're studying the lives of saints. Did you know um, Saint Faustina
Hmm.
of Krakow? She used to go to the cemeteries and talk to the dead.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
I
So
did
a lot
not
of
know
people
that.
say, a lot of people tell me, they go, "Oh, that's spiritism and that's a sin and you shouldn't do that." I said, "Well, there's saints that did it, and when they did it,
Right,
they weren't saints because you don't become a saint till after you're dead. So
right.
when they were
Exactly,
doing it, they were alive just like me. So
exactly.
don't
Something there is,
right,
and I think it's as far as religious origin is how you want to interpret things.
right,
Uh, but yes, yes, I do believe that. And as a matter of fact, I remember I have my aunt. She passed away already, and when she was very young, she during the school year she would board at this very old Catholic school, very very old that had like the church was adjacent to the school and everything.
right,
So anyway, of course, as an adult, you would talk to her about ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. She's like, "Oh, come on, stop that. That's not real." And she'd like, poo poo, like literally poo poo it. And then, like, there was like a few years before she died. One day, I can't remember how the conversation comes up. She admits that she's a little girl. She says she's sitting in her classroom. She must have been 7 or 8 years old. She said that all of a sudden, and by the way, back then, the girls were taught where she was at. There was nuns who were teaching her. It was all girls. There was no co-ed stuff. This was many years ago. All right, we must have been talking like 1930s.
mm-hmm,
She says that she was in class, and she says that she looked to the doorway of the classroom. And by the way, this was when I say old. This place must have been at least a couple hundred years old. The buildings and all this stuff. She sees a little altar boy standing in the doorway of the classroom. And she says that he looked very, very sad. But he was dressed like in the full altar boy, looking very, very sad. But she said that he looked very real, like he looked like a real boy. not like none of the wispy or. And then she says she looked away. When she looked back, he was gone. Like, and I remember telling her, "You've never told me this story before." And sometimes that's what I'm talking about. People having these experiences
Right.
where they're not looking for it. And I was like, how can you say after having that experience? I mean, I'm not saying you have to go whole hog, but then you know, if anybody ever mentioned ghost to you, you'd be like, oh, that's not real. You saw something when you were a kid. But you were saying something about people that weird out. Like if I go down this rabbit hole, I don't know where it's gonna lead. And again, um, altar boy, extremely old Catholic school church structures. Yeah, and she says that what struck her, even as a child, was how sad he looked. Very serious, but very sad.
Well, I mean, and then now the question remains is what exactly was that apparition? Was that
Yes,
residual energy or was that an actual spirit? Because there's a difference. You know, a lot of times, a lot of things happen in those churches, right? I mean, maybe
yes.
it's energy that's just in the walls, or
Hmm.
maybe it is an actual spirit. You know, the Catholic Church there's a school of thinking in the Catholic Church that believes that ghosts are spirits in purgatory. Now, purgatory,
Yes,
we've been schooled since we were young that purgatory was this place that where there's a lot of fire that's
right.
purifying people. That's not necessarily true. My theory is that purgatory is not a place. Purgatory is a state of
Hmm.
being. It is that
Yes,
intermediate state between um, here and you want to call it heaven, that's fine. You want to call it the afterlife, the hereafter, the spirit world, whatever you want to call it.
yes.
And I believe that purgatory is merely spirits that are here to learn what they didn't learn in life before they
Hmm.
move on.
Right.
I think that's the purification. Purification is they have lessons that still need to be learned. And
Yes.
that's why they're here. And there is a lot of thinking in the Catholic Church that that's exactly what they are. Um,
There's a
so
there's a and I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no,
Something
that's
that's
it.
going to dovetail with. There's a priest. Oh, he was an exorcist. My God, Marlene. Why can't I remember his name? Shoot. But anyway, they're inter. I was is he an interviewer? Right. Sometimes that I go through so much material. Anyway, he's saying that one of the ways they would determine if activity in a house was demonic was, I remember now what it was. There was a lady. Her and her husband had a very bitter divorce, very bitter. Okay, even to the point that later on, apparently, he got sick, was gonna die. He even came like, let's like forgive me or let's make a like let's not. And she told him no. So who knows what happened there? But anyway, the man dies, and sure enough, she starts having all these activity in her house, and she's saying, that she's thinking it must have been her husband, and she started now not feeling guilty, but I think worried. I don't know what. So they somehow or other this priest is brought in. So I imagine the activity must have been pretty kind of like a maybe malicious or malevolent flavor to it. And he was explaining that one of the determinations they make as to whether manifestations are demonic or not is if they pray. Let's say in this case that she was thinking it's my ex-husband who is. They say if they pray for that soul and it goes away, he says that was usually it was a soul in purgatory,
Right.
and we've prayed for it, whether it's a mass or prayers are said, and it stops. They're saying that's it. It's a ghost, like what you were saying. It was a soul held in purgatory. He says when we do the mass or the prayers, and the activity continues, he says that sometimes is an indicator that what we got there is non-human.
Okay. Okay. Hey, I'll buy that actually. You
Yeah.
want to hear something? You want to hear something cool? Our last
Yes.
investigation, and this was just very recently. We were in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, there's some mansions in the middle of town. One of them was actually the inspiration for the Haunted Mansion in Disney World that looks just like it. This is where we
Okay.
got it. And the people that lived in these big mansions in town were called the Packers, and they were railroad magnates.
Okay.
And the cemetery, which is on a mountain just behind these mansions, is said to be haunted by a couple different spirits, and one of them was Sarah Packer, the
Okay.
wife of Asa Packer, who owned one of the mansions. Matter of fact, he's like the patriarch of the town. We do this investigation, and she wants to talk, and
Okay.
she's communicating to us. And right through this very no, it wasn't through this. It wasn't through that spirit box. It was through a different spirit box. You know the word that came through?
What?
Mass. MASS.
There you go. Let's see.
So you know what?
Yes.
Guess what we
And
did?
I take it. I'm going to assume that they were Catholic.
They were not. They were Episcopalian.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But it
Okay.
doesn't matter
No, I know.
because
I know.
if you get to the other side and you realize that having a Catholic mass set is what you need, it doesn't matter what you were in
You know
life.
what? I'm not that familiar with other religions
I am
like
not either.
Episcopalian or Anglican. Do they like how the Catholics have the Mass for the dead?
The
I don't know if they
yeah,
have
they
that.
don't because I don't think the Episcopalians do because they're Protestant, but I'm not sure because the
Right.
Episcopalians are very close to
Yes.
the Catholics as far as the structure of the services, and they do have a
Anglican also are very much. They even have priests
it's the
and
same.
nuns, and yes, and they're very similar. But again,
Yep.
it's and I tell everybody this. You remember that when William Peter Blatty wrote The Exorcist, he
Yes.
based it off uh, an article that was written back in 1949 by a reporter. I can't remember his name, from the Washington Post. All right. He was talking about what they call Roland Doe or John Doe because he
Hmm.
was a minor, that they did the exorcism. And, he read that article, and that was one of the inspirations he had for when he wrote the book, The Exorcist, right? So I was reading into it, and they were saying, how everybody thinks, that the Jesuits, they were the ones that supposedly did, the exorcism for the boy and whatever. They were saying the father was a Catholic, but he was one of these, like, not involved in Catholicism. His Roland Doe's mom and grandmother were German Lutherans, very German Lutheran.
Mm.
Okay. So when all this starting to, there was truth. There was an aunt, a maternal aunt, who's a spiritualist who had passed away. And when he started, and it just so happens that all of this starts happening around the time of his adolescence, 13, 14 years old, which, sometimes is the nexus of poltergeist activity, weird stuff. Anyway, somewhere in this whole thing, his mom goes to their Lutheran pastor and tells him, hey, something's going on. I don't know what it is. The guy, if you read, the kid had a weird behavior problem, whether it was, demonically sourced, I don't know, whatever. She goes to see him, and he tells her he's the one that points her to the Jesuits. And by the way, the Jesuits never went to the house. They would meet at, at the where you have the office, where the priest, not the God, there's a word for it.
The rectory?
It's like right at the rectory. She went over there. By the way, eventually they do convert to Catholicism after what happened.
Oh wow. Huh.
But her pastor, the German Lutheran pastor, said, "Sorry, no, exorcism or something demonic. Go see the Catholics." And he was the one that sent them over. But in other words, it wasn't like the Jesuits were seeking her out. She was the one that came to them and described what was going on and what the problem was. And she had come to the rectory. They never went to her house. And of course, later on, he was exorcised at I think it was it St. Louis, at one of their hospitals. I think it was the Alexian hospital, which at one point the Jesuits had set it up also as a insane asylum.
Wow.
And do you know that he grew up and he became a NASA scientist?
Isn't that amazing?
And he died in 2021. And that finally came out who he was, by the way, after he died. And the biggest concern he had was that he was afraid that he would get known as the boy. He says he lived in eternal fear as an adult because of that.
Yeah, yeah. There's such a stigma attached to it sometimes. You know, that's an amazing story. And there's so many takeaways, but one of the takeaways that I have is, whether something is a ghost or a demon depends on who you talk to.
Sure.
Because if you talk to any Protestant, it's a demon.
Yeah,
Because they believe in what I call the cosmic vacuum cleaner theory, that when you die, you're
that's it.
either sucked up or you're sucked down, and there's no in between, and
That's great.
you don't have a choice,
No in between.
and there's no hanging around even if you want to.
And if you are, then you're not human
Right.
or whatever.
Exactly.
And don't get me
So
wrong, though, Bobby. You tell me, especially with these people that you do have sometimes spirits, human or not human. I like to use the non-human because I think so. That demon word is loaded, overloaded, or overused. That do imitate. They do pretend sometimes to be somebody that they're not.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, that's what
Well,
I
look at
believe.
the Bible says that hell is a place of darkness, gnashing of teeth, and a separation from God. It's not
Yes,
necessarily fire, brimstone, and people poking you and all that other stuff.
right.
And as we know, as we become more scientifically advanced, and people that are into metaphysics as well as science can say that, the afterlife is not up there and it's not down there, it's here. Everything is a
Yes,
different vibration, it's a
yes,
different dimension. So these people, these souls, they could be a lower vibrational spirit, and people hate that sometimes when I say that. They go, what's a lower vibrational spirit? Everything is vibration,
yes,
and a lower vibrational spirit just hasn't made it to that level yet where they can advance, and they stay here. They're trapped here. Again, it's a separation from God. They're here, not where they want to be. And some of them, and we don't know why, we don't have all the answers. I can't give you the exact answer why they're allowed to stay here, but apparently sometimes they're not demonic, but they will mimic demonic activity, and they could really mess with you.
yes. And I tell people, that if you were a SOB or a real piece of work as a human, like when you were alive, I mean,
Right.
and you go and you hang out, you're still that kind of like awful type of person. Maybe even
Absolutely.
more so
Right.
because,
I
you
agree.
know, you're just very unhappy and frustrated.
And it's just like they weren't invited to the party. They're pissed
Hmm.
off.
Yes.
And I just don't think that sometimes there are these cosmic police guards that are like, okay, come, it's you. We're bringing you over here, or we're bringing. They're in their own hell.
Yes.
They're in their own state of being, and they're miserable. And a lot of times we can't see them; they can't see us. But sometimes when that veil is thin, or the location is right, or people
Yes.
call them into being,
Hmm.
they can call them, and then all of a sudden they make that connection and things start to happen. um this is all, you remember the word for all of this used to be psychic phenomenon.
Yes, I remember that
Well,
word.
psychic phenomena, it was all called psychic phenomena. Why? Because it happens up here. Because our
Right.
brains, I don't believe everything is in our brain. I think our brains are receivers. I think
Hmm.
it's all coming at, we're all the time tapping into that universal field of knowledge, or what they call the morphic field.
Yes.
um all this stuff is lurking around in there.
Yes.
So you got to be careful what your intentions are, what you say, what you want to do. Because look, folks, if you want to call these things, they'll come, but not
Oh
always
no,
in the way that you
absolutely,
think.
absolutely. The other day I was, as a matter of fact, a couple of shows ago, I was talking about this was, and sometimes I have to think because sometimes more years have gone by than to me. It's like, man, it's been 20 years, but it must have been like 18 years, something like that. I remember, I used to work for a foundation. I was an investigator. I was always a freelancer. I was an investigator for a foundation that covered the state. And they said, Marlene, we have this lady. She's can you go out there with Charlie? He's one of our other investigators. Charlie had he had the like premium camera stuff. Go out there. This lady's saying she's having all these things that are going on in her house. Just talk to her, and have Charlie go through the house and take pictures, see if something shows up, orbs like what you were talking about, or anything. So this lady, one of the things she's saying is, by the way, this was it was a brand new house. Okay, nobody lived there before. She's saying that she's getting messages written in soap film on her mirrors. By the way,
Mm.
you would walk into her bathrooms, and her bathroom was like huge bathrooms, and the mirrors are like, these to the ceiling, kind of like. I was like, okay, well, and I'm walking around with her, and this other guy took off, and he's walking around this huge house, shooting off pictures, and finally, we're at the kitchen, and I said, okay, some of this stuff we got to go over, but let me ask you personally. Well, and no, look at this. She gives me this picture. You remember this was a developed picture. Remember when people would get red eye because of the flash?
Yes, I remember that very well.
All right. So she gives me this picture, and she's sitting at the dining room table where she was at. And when somebody's like staring down, but then they look up, like they swivel their eyes up, and she's in this picture. She's doing that, but she's real serious, and she's got the red eye, right? Which,
Right.
but this was a very common thing. And I'm looking at the picture, and I'm like, you're sitting at the table looking very serious at whoever took the picture. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what am I missing? And I'm like, okay, yeah, just look at my eyes. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you got red eye from the camera. So anyway, to make a long story short, her credibility kind of like was a little bit damaged there, because she's trying to make it sound like she was alluding to I'm getting possessed, or somebody's trying to possess me.
Right.
One of those
Right.
deals, right? And again, like I said, this was a brand new house. It wasn't that I could say, well, what's the history on this house? Nothing. And they hadn't been living there that long, maybe less than a year, if that much. So I'm like, okay, I'm missing. Okay, you're thinking you got red eye and you've got the serious look. She's like, yeah. What? In other words, when she's trying to allude, is I got red eye because. But my point in this is, I afterwards we studied. We didn't come across anything in the soap film. I'm sorry, I wasn't convinced. But anyway, one of the things, Bobbie, this is something that I learned. When people do that they're pretending. Sometimes you get a visitor that comes calling because you just put out an invite. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's the part that people miss. Then I'm like, I go, it's not a guarantee because it's not. But you're looking so hard that you want to be haunted or possessed or whatever it is that you want. And I don't know where she was going, even though I got this feeling. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, now that I remember, this was around the time of the advent of all the reality shows like Ghost Hunter and all this. And I don't know if she was thinking, I'm going to make myself a possessed medium, psychic, what, ghost house. I don't know where she was going with this, but that's the feeling I got. I'm thinking to myself, lady, you keep this up, you know what? You're going to come a point where you're not going to be pretending anymore. You're going to have something on your hands. Keep this up.
You know, boy, this hits home. I have a very good friend in the paranormal, and I don't want to. I'm going to try to say this because I don't want to describe her, say anything, because she's a good friend, and if she sees this podcast, I don't, you know. But the thing, but the
You
thing
ratted me
is,
out.
her whole persona is of um the Queen of Darkness. Okay,
Okay.
and she wears the Baphomet, or and she
Hmm.
all the occult jewelry, and
Right.
writes books and says that she has an attachment, and I'm like, and yet there's so many times she's very unhappy and she can't understand why things happen
Why?
to her, and I'm like, the
It's,
elephant in the room. It's like
it's no mystery here. Do you know
there
that? It's
isn't,
no mystery to
and
this.
I'm like, I really like this girl, and she's a
Yes.
sweetheart, but how
Hmm.
do I tell her this is not, you're not going down the right path here?
Right. Even if you're pretending,
Right.
supposedly with all this, all this accessories.
Right. Exactly. Even if you're pretending, that's exactly right.
Hmm.
This is not what you want to be putting out there,
No, it's not.
because one of these days it will come to a head.
Yes. It's like they believe, but they really don't believe. But then, like you said, these things are happening. It's like, sometimes you're looking for the Hollywood version of what you think is going on.
Right.
And it's not the way it works. Your life will unravel by degrees.
Yep. And you don't want to be a jerk, and
Right.
you don't want to come across as being like a religious zealot or anything like that.
Yes. Yes.
But look, I'm 61 years old. I know what I know. And I
Yes.
know
That's the
no
thing.
good is going to come of this in the long run.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
right now, you know, she's got people that are inviting her to events because she puts on the whole goth thing, and
Right.
and I'm like, this is just I just see this ending badly in my own viewpoint.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing that sometimes you think this is so obvious when you ask yourself that question when you say, "Oh my God, why are just maybe I'm unhappy or certain things in my life are not working out?" Like because nobody leaves a charmed life. Come on, but
Right.
when you have these, that it's like perpetual, just different degrees of unhappiness or bad luck or whatever, and it's like this is very obvious, but why don't you see it?
Right.
Like it's staring you in the face because you're
It
calling it,
is.
and you're in. And if you go by, whether you want to call it manifestation or you become a magnet for it, or you're just vibrating, what you were saying earlier about vibrating, that everything is vibrational. That's what you're vibrating at. This is what you're attracting because you've
I,
got that.
I know people that say there's such a thing as good demons. I'm like, that's
Oh, jeez.
that's an oxymoron
Yes,
right
I know,
there.
isn't it?
There
Yes,
is
isn't
no
it?
such thing as a good demon. There are
Yes,
no demons that are going to help you. And if
yes.
they seem like they're helping you, trust me, they're not helping you.
No,
There's an ulterior motive there.
absolutely, absolutely. Which,
Oh,
which, by the way, a lot of that what I was talking about earlier, these people that get all caught up in whether it's a Ouija board or any type of that they start conversing, and I've read this one so many times. They start conversing with who is either pretending to be a spirit or even if not helpful, giving them information, and then somewhere along the line it starts turning the conversation. It becomes something else. And it's like what you were saying is at the
hmm.
beginning. Yeah, what's there's a movie that says let the right one in. Well, no, this is like let me in, and but I got to convince you of that. Same thing, and I'm going to ask you what you think about this. Whenever I hear sometimes that haunting is a child, I'm very, very careful with it because I think sometimes there are certain things that do masquerade as children. Because I tell everybody, most adults, if they think, especially of a child, your guard goes down. And you're like, oh my God, a kid. Oh, well. And I'm not saying there's doesn't, but you have to be really careful because sometimes that's exactly what it wants is to for your what's the how you're always at the beginning of something you're like very careful and you look at things closer, but if it's a child it's like no man, it's a kid, my God, a poor kid. No, nothing bad's gonna that's not bad. It's like no, you have to be very careful when
Yeah,
there's
because you have to wonder why that child is not in a better
yes,
place. Why that child has been
yes,
sentenced to linger here.
yes,
You have to wonder
yes,
that. You do have to wonder that. I'm guilty of going into hauntings where we thought it was a child, but you make a
mhm,
very valid point. Why is that even possible for a child to be there?
yes,
Something so
yes.
innocent. So yes,
Even
ver-
even the whatever it's like, and I think it hurts a person's heart, any person. I mean, to think, oh my God, a kid, this poor kid, he's stuck. What happened? Like
right.
he needs our help. Or it's like,
Well, and let me tell you something, folks that are listening. All these people that say they can cross spirits over, I'm very skeptical of that too.
well, I
I
think that always there's free will, which what you were talking about, people that get
right.
stuck, the people, because always free will is in play.
Yeah. Yeah. I think free will is in play. I think there are spirits that don't cross over because I'll tell you something that's universal b- across all aspects of the supernatural, NDE, and anything else is the tunnel of light. There
Yes,
have been paintings of that go back hundreds of years of
yes,
people with the tunnel going to the
Mhm.
tunnel. And some people don't want to go through that tunnel
Yes, I've heard that. They're
because
resistant.
it could be fear of judgment. It
That
could
one for
be,
sure, yes.
yeah. Um, it could be a lot of things, or unfinished business is always the big one that we think,
Mhm.
or people, they just haven't told their story yet, and they just don't want to cross over until they
Yes.
know that
Mhm.
their story has been told. Um, but yeah, so it goes to what you just said: free will. They you have free will after death. If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. I'm
Well, there's
going.
a version of it where they say that
I'm,
people die and they either drugged, anesthetized, like maybe it's during some type of surgery,
right,
violent, sudden death. In other words, they miss the you're dead part, right?
right.
So they die, but they don't. They're self aware. How's that?
Yep,
It's like I'm me. I'm still me. And then they have that experience of, let's say, a dead relative coming for them, but they're like, hey, wait a minute, you're dead. I'm not going with you because you're dead. In other words,
right.
I'm one
Denial.
of you now, so they can't be forced to go
Right. I don't
because
think.
they're still
I
trying to
think you're
figure
right.
out what happened. Yeah, and when you were talking about acknowledgement, sometimes it's think actually have somebody say, "You're dead. You're dead."
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of free will in this.
Yes,
Um, I mean, there's some really scary near death experiences where people have the sensation of being clawed by these dark
I've
creatures and
heard of
pulled
those
down. And
NDEs that are very dark, not the like you said, not the tunnel of light kind of
nope,
deal.
nope, 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 nope. And uh, so it's a really complicated thing. And we're only scratching the surface because look, psychic investigators, paranormal investigators, call it what you will. We've only been at this now for a couple decades, honestly. I mean, sure,
Yes,
there's been a handful of people, maybe in the 1800s and the 1900s, that were known for this, like Hans Holzer, and if you read his books and things like
yes.
that. But
Yeah, that was the
most
first
of it,
stuff I read.
I mean, the people that really are deep diving this en masse, that's a pretty recent thing.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. This thing with the reality shows made it mainstream,
Right.
more mainstream.
I agree.
Because even when Hans Holzer, he had like three psychics. He had Sybil Leek. He had my God, he had like three. Sybil Leek was the only one that was English that he used as basically as a medium to speak
Right.
with whoever was there. Now, this is the thing. If you look at most of his books and his stories, they were at historical places. So some of his information sometimes was difficult to verify because it was, some of these houses up in the Northeast we're talking here Revolutionary times, things like
Hmm.
that. So, but besides that, there was like, I want to say up to the early 2000s, there was like, what was it? Not Unsolved Mysteries. What was that other one? There was another show, but it wasn't that format when we came into the Ghost Hunters and all that. That's when it became mainstream,
Right.
where everybody was like, "Hey, I want to do that." It was like, "You sure about
Well,
that?"
I mean, I'm friends with Heather Taddy from Paranormal State,
Okay,
and I just recently did an event with her,
okay,
and I told her, I said, I got it. She's younger than me, but I said, you really, I have to credit you. I said, Paranormal State, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures in England, you had Most Haunted. I said, and that's about it.
hmm,
I said, and
yes,
that's 15 years ago. That said, you
yes,
guys you are the reason. You standing right here are the reason for this whole phenomenon today. And she was kind of humbled by that, I think. But I believe that it's true. It's those shows that really brought it to the forefront and made it less taboo.
yes, yes, exactly. Whereas before it was like, "Oh, let's tell a ghost story at Christmas time" or something like that. It was like,
Right.
all of a sudden, um, you know who? Now that you mentioned Paranormal State, okay, I interviewed not too long ago Bob Kramer. He's the I don't know if you're familiar with him. He wrote that book, The Demon of Brownsville Road, that he has. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, he still lives at that house.
Okay.
Okay, that I think it's Pittsburgh, somewhere in that vicinity. And this was an on. Now he runs it as a bed and breakfast, but
Right.
he had to. It was very difficult. Ryan Buell and the people from Paranormal State went there
Mhm.
to that location. He was telling me that after the visit, that they went to that his house at that time. This was when, of course, when everything was when a lot of things started going south for Ryan personally, and
Oh,
for the
wow.
group and everything. Because remember, I used to watch Paranormal State all the time. You know, I used to watch him all the time, and he was telling me, and he has stayed in touch with Ryan Buell, by the way, but that a lot of the stuff that started to unravel for Ryan after post going to the house there, his house, because of course when he went, they were doing like an investigation, that kind of deal. But yes, um, which by the way, he was, if he's really gone. He did the typical, when some young couple with kids buy a house, and that thing, and it was really funny because when he wrote the book, which is a great book, but we were talking about, there were these little telltale signs like about when he's buying the house, typical stuff that you ask the owner, oh, and is there anything wrong, like tell me, and the guy tells him something, oh yeah, we've had mass in the house. I was like, okay, when you have an owner telling you that they've had mass in their house, and you're first going to be like, why would you have a mass in your house of all things? Not a blessing, a mass.
Right. Right.
But he says that they were so excited because they got the house below the. As a matter of fact, they said we gave them a price thinking they're going to laugh in our face when we give them this offer. They're going to laugh in our face, and they were like, they actually took it. But of course, like, and I see that. I could see that. Where I would be thrilled. Oh my God, we're going to get this big house, and we've got the kids and everything, and you overlook all these telltale, of course, in hindsight, signs that yeah. And because now, and I know a lot of things have changed. A lot of states now, even though, but we're talking about the legitimacy of hauntings, they, depending on the state, that you have to disclose if the house has a reputation for being haunted.
Isn't that something?
Uh huh. Yes. In some states you have to. In some states, if the owner, I mean the potential buyer asks. In other words, if you don't ask, they're not going to tell you. There's others that they have to disclose it. And as a matter of fact, there's a subset of realtors that's what they specialize in, is what they call stigmatized properties. And
That's
usually,
crazy. I've
yes,
never heard that term, by the way. I just learned
yes,
something.
yes, these are realtors.
Stigmatized properties.
Yes. And usually they're either where like a murder was committed, something that and or that the property has a reputation for being haunted. And it's like, there's a lot of, sometimes people think, oh, and I'm going to say this, that sometimes I think there's people that sometimes have legit hauntings going on, and their exit plan is, I'm selling my house, and then they say we're not going to call in a team because it's gonna hurt our chances. And it's like whoever comes in after, sorry, you're on your own. Because I tell them investigations that I had, that yes, that there was something going on and so on and so forth, and we're like, hey, if you need help, we can follow up or whatever. Whatever it was that their solution more often than people think is to move. If they could financially do it, let's say whether it was a rental, they'd wait till their lease was up, depending on how bad what was going on there, or if they owned the house, it was like, we're going to sell it. This was the solution they had to the whole. And you better believe they were not going to tell whoever's coming in after the fact that there was some type of paranormal, whatever, supernatural stuff going on. And of course, sometimes if it was attached to them, it's like, well, you took it with you. But yeah, the yes, there's a subset of realtors that's what they do. That's how they work. And I think they go to the angle that they sometimes they even find buyers that do want a haunted house, a haunted
Oh,
house.
I know a lot of people that would probably want that.
Yes, until they live there.
Until they get it. That's right.
Yes, exactly. Until they get it. Until they get it. Yes. And I say for a lot of people, I go, sometimes on investigations, you got to tell the person, there's nothing really, if there's something here, it's residual. It's not even an active haunting. This is maybe something, a case of repetition, but there's nothing here. They're disappointed. I'm like, you don't know how lucky you are
Exactly.
that this is just residual and you have nothing to worry about. And if you stop paying attention to it, eventually it'll just
Right.
dissipate, because they're like, no, it's like, yeah, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, you sure. It's not mine, whatever. It's like, no, it's not. No, but I could swear. It's like, okay. But yes, and you find that. Let me ask you, since I know you go to some of these historic places, Bobbie. Haven't you found that either the docents or the people that do the tours sometimes have the best stories because they're there before and after everybody leaves?
Yep. I mean, it depends on their mindset because some of them have
Okay,
great
yes, you're right.
stories, and then some of
Yes,
them are like, I've been a caretaker in this cemetery for 30 years and I've never seen a thing. And I'm always like, I'll bet you
okay,
you have, and you just explained it
yes,
away as something else.
sure. Or you're not about to
Um,
tell me because then it would be make it real.
right. Yeah. And you're not going to go to work. But
Exactly. It's like,
they don't want to know. They don't want to know. They want to put their
yes,
blinders on and do their job. But no, I mean, yeah, some of these, look, you know what? I've said many, many times, I said, I love ghost walks. I love ghost tours. I think it's great for people that want
yes,
a very low impact way to ghost hunt because you're not communicating with anything. You're just going to
you're
the
just
spooky
there.
location and listening to the stories. But I like them because it gives me a lead. So like, whoa, that that grave over there is haunted. Well, thank you very much for that information. I'll be back later.
Right, especially if it's one of these tour guides that really knows the good stories, the real stuff, the real skinny
Right,
on the, not the general. This is like, oh, this is what really happened. This is the
right.
backstory to that scandal or something like that.
We've done that many times. I mean, a lot of the episodes you'll see on our channel were taken like hours after we just did like a ghost walk, and we've gotten great evidence that way.
Oh yes, sometimes I think that, like I said, sometimes it's just that you're there, that you're wanting, that you're hoping, like, okay, and they're like, oh my god, there's somebody here that wants to like
That's a
talk to me or
very good
see
point,
me.
actually, and the reason that's a very good point is, there's always these what I call them paranormal attractions du jour. Like the
Mhm.
paranormal attraction of the day, hey, have you been to the Shanley Hotel? Have you investigated the Queen Mary over here? Or and like some of these haunted houses now, all they do is sell tickets for investigations, and it's a revolving door of investigators. Don't you think that if it's an intelligent haunt, don't you think these ghosts are saying, "Are you kidding me? They want me to tap twice again?" And or if it's residual energy, they have to have sucked all the energy out of these places. The most
True.
active places are the places that are never investigated,
Oh,
the little
absolutely.
known places.
Absolutely. I tell them sometimes if some of these places that you said is like everybody and their second cousin is trapped, I think the ghosts are like, I'm out of here. Don't ask me anymore what my name is. I'm gone. That's it. If I end up in hell, who cares? It can't be worse than this. Or what's
Yep,
wrong with you? It's like, you know,
it's
I'm
true
out
though.
of
You
here.
know what? Would you like to know my least eventful investigation? Guess where it was?
Where?
The Conjuring House.
Are you serious? What
Not a
happened?
thing.
They was like, hey, you're the Conjuring House. What happened?
That was my least eventful investigation. I went there with my
Wow.
nephew
Okay.
and nothing.
You know that it went up for auction back in Halloween.
Oh, I know. Jason
Yeah.
Hawes is trying to buy it, from what I understand.
Jason Hawes, okay.
Yeah.
I remember it was like, I was like, oh, it's that apparently the person that purchased it.
I think he is. I mean, he's been leading the charge for a fundraiser. I think he's trying to get it, but I could be mistaken. Jason, if you're listening, I don't know.
Well, now I'm going to tell you this about a year ago. Okay. And I tell everybody, I would love to be a fly in the wall and just, this is in Indianapolis. There's a guy that was found dead in a tanning bed at a Planet Fitness.
Mm.
Okay. He'd been there for 3 days.
Wow.
Now, obviously, the way they find, and I'm thinking to myself, where was the staff doing at the Planet Fitness?
Aren't you supposed to clean the beds afterwards?
Exactly. They find this guy not because one of these employees finally goes back and, man, something smells bad back here. They find out because he went there like on a Friday, and by Sunday he's like nowhere to be found. And his family reports him missing, and he was wearing an ankle monitor. And you know how they track people with the ankle monitor. They found him there. He had died of a fentanyl overdose, which I'm sure probably had to do something while he was wearing an ankle monitor. Now, I always kid and I say, can you imagine now the employees, who's going to be the last one out the door when they're closing? It's like, hey, you got to go back to where the tanning beds are. I was like, nope. You know, it's like, no, hey, you're going to be the last one. You're going to close up, right? No. You're going to.
That's funny.
I'm telling you, because that's right there, the ingredients for a haunting. You know, the guy's baking in a tanning bed for 3 days.
Wow.
He died of a fentanyl overdose. And by the way, the guy was in his 30s, I believe. It wasn't like an old, because when I first heard, I thought, well, maybe this was an older person, had a heart attack or something, and they just passed away. And no, he fentanyl overdose in his 30s. And what's surprising to me is that I think to myself, wasn't he smelling? And from what 72 hours later, a body would be smelling like pungent. So yeah. So that see, that looks to, I don't know, but that would probably be a great place to investigate. I doubt Planet Fitness would allow anybody in there anyway, but still.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Anyway, Bobbie, you were telling me that you're going to be starting up a podcast. Have you started it yet? Or you're going to be starting it?
Oh yeah. We've already done like 21 episodes.
Okay.
And it's on YouTube.
Okay.
It's only on YouTube. In fact, it's not anywhere else. It's not on any of the other platforms. It's only on YouTube. And it's called Creepy Conversations from the Castle.
Okay.
And the reason is because my house, which I'm in right now, looks like a castle. So we call it Creepy Conversations from the Castle.
From the castle. And
we've got some good guests. I had John Zaffis on, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah.
He's been I was talking was it a week or 2 weeks ago with Rich Valdez. He's one of the exorcists that they featured on
I know him.
Eli Roth, right? You know, and he was telling me about some of the stuff that he's done for John Zaffis. And it's funny because some of the time he says that John Zaffis tells him, you need to get the hell out of there. You know, like one of those deals.
I'll tell you what, it's a great episode and he killed it. He was on that night and everybody was saying what a great show that was. But other than I actually try not to get people like him on because he's so well known. I want to get the people that are not well known on.
What do you think about now that you said that, what do you think about this thing going on with the Annabelle doll? Since you said something about the Conjuring house.
Well, you know what? I've had people that don't want to believe Annabelle had anything to do with a certain person's passing.
Yes.
How can I say this? Again, can we talk about the elephant in the room? This person was the one in charge of taking Annabelle from the case, cleaning the case, putting Annabelle back.
Right.
And this is a case that says absolutely, positively, do not open.
Right.
He's a young man.
I've heard of all the items that the Warrens had. This was the one that they were very strict about.
This was the one. Mm-hmm. He was a young man. He died, just dropped dead of mysterious circumstances.
Yes, unexpectedly.
I am sorry, folks. I don't want to offend anybody, but I believe that it's all connected.
And you know what? And you could look at it like, because it's like, okay, well, you can interpret things. And he's doing a, what was the name of the tour? Devils on the Run or something like that. I was
Hmm.
like, oh my God, I don't know all the things to name it. But yes, I think that, and they're saying, well, this doll was not there with him. The doll was in another building, but you just, like you pointed out, you're handling it. You're in charge of this item, which, by the way, when you look at it, it's very innocuous. Not what you see in the movie version,
Correct.
which of course, they had to change because the manufacturers of the Raggedy Ann said, no, no, you can't do that to our doll. You
Well,
got to make something up.
Father Bob Bailey
Hmm.
said without any hesitation whatsoever, it's a demon.
Yes,
Folks, if it's a demon, you got to treat it like a demon.
exactly.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to say anything about what I feel about them touring around with the doll. I
Right.
just, because the reality is I actually had a table at one of their events,
Okay.
and I cannot tell you I've never seen anything like it in my life. People were stretched 2 city blocks in a
Yes,
line to see this doll.
I believe it. I believe it. Absolutely.
And so you might say, well, you're contributing to it because you were at this event, and that would be true. I'm not going to deny that.
Hmm.
So, but I can't tell, and I spent time alone in a room with Annabelle. I didn't go near it. I
Right, right,
didn't go near the case. I didn't open it up, but I
right.
spent time alone in the room with Annabelle, and I just stared at it. And it does give you a creepy feeling. It really does. Almost like that thing is alive.
Like whatever it is, like there's something inside of you. Your
There's
your
something there.
warning bells are
You
are
can
going
feel
on,
it.
going.
Look, when you're a paranormal investigator and you've done this long enough, when you go into a certain area, whether
Oh
it's a house,
yes,
a cemetery, or anywhere, you get
yes,
the vibe. You get the
yes.
feeling. The air gets thick.
Hmm.
There's an oppressive feeling.
Yes.
You just know. Like when I went into the Conjuring house, I felt nothing. I've gone to some
Right,
cemeteries where I gone through the gates and I needed to get out of there. You just know. That's the
right.
kind of feeling I got around Annabelle. So
Yes.
you ask me how I feel about it. I have mixed feelings, but I'm erring on the side of it's a potentially dangerous game, and that may have been borne out already. We'll never know for
Yes.
sure, but boy, I'll tell you, circumstances really point to
Unusual.
something supernatural.
Right. And I think that what happens is that, don't get me wrong, I believe in, I'm a capitalist man. I believe in making money.
Right.
But sometimes that blinds people
Yeah.
to where, like, well, this thing that they were saying that it was demonic. Like, was like, wow, come on. It's like, "Ah, we can make a lot of money with this, that kind of deal. And you want to overlook the what the people that had that item were warning about already to begin with.
Like
It's like,
big time
hey,
warning. Like not maybe
yes,
sort of kind of like absolutely positively do not open this, even if
yes,
you just doing it to change the light bulb. You just don't open it. And it
exactly.
was being opened and closed constantly, from what I understand.
Right. And some of these things I believe are like, and I'm not saying by this that they're mechanical, but the interaction, it's like a battery when you start charging it. All right, that human touch, that exchange, whether it's like the handling or the
Yeah.
attention or whatever. I think that when you don't, it goes dormant. I'm not saying it's
Right.
gone; it just goes dormant. And then when you start getting that, and I'm going to go real quick down a rabbit hole. This is when, once upon a time, this is me making stuff up, but I might be on more. When this conversation starts about, hey, with that doll. But by the way, I believe all these items that belong to the Warrens in their museum were sold off. But anyway, whenever that conversation came up about, or that conversation started or was in somebody's mind about, hey, we could make money, let's put it on tour, we could go here, we could go there to this show. If you don't think there's a possibility that what is in there was whispering in the ear of someone, and where somebody said, well, hey, you know what? The Warrens were, they were always said, you got to be careful. No.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, come on. We could make money. All we could just do is show it. You know, whatever. And of course, and that's the way people sometimes don't understand that demonically possessed items, that's what they work. They're not going to throw a piece of furniture at you across the room.
Nope.
It's the in your ear that you think is your own thoughts, your own bright idea. That's how it works.
Yep.
But people get carried away with the Hollywood version of, yeah, or like, paranormal activity pulls you off the bed and stuff like that. But
Yeah. I mean, all that sensational stuff. People crawling on the ceiling. That's always my
yes,
favorite.
yes, it's like, man. I mean, yeah, there's stuff that is like, man, it's like over the top. And I say to say it, you know what? The way that some of this stuff works when we're talking about evil with a capital E, it's very, and I know that they use it a movie, very insidious, very slow, almost. And this is the thing, it comes about in a way that you think it's your idea. Not that you're being manipulated, because nobody likes to be manipulated. And it's like you manipulated, but basically you see it as you're being motivated. But you're really being
Right.
manipulated.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
But you don't find the motivation. And that's what I think that a lot of people don't realize when they get involved in this. And like, again, I'm not talking about pretend haunted stuff. We're not, when you're talking something malevolent, dangerous, patient, it's like it knows all our weaknesses in the sense of, you know what, if I talk to you about making money, you're not the one that's going to fall for this. This one over here, this one is going to fall for the let's make money scheme. There it goes. Anyway, it has been wonderful to speak to you, Bobbie. So are you
Oh,
going to be
thank
working on any new books? Because I know you said that, or any new shows that you're going to be going to or anything like that?
Well, the one thing that I would really like to tell everybody that's listening to
Mm-hmm.
this is go to our YouTube channel and subscribe.
Yes.
And you'll see it right
Yes.
beneath my name there. It's ghosthunter.ws, or you can go to
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and just put in Gallo Family Ghost Hunters. Right
Okay.
now, we, as of this week, just happened this week,
Yes.
we just passed 60,000 subscribers.
Congratulations. That is
Thank you.
great.
But
That's
we need
fantastic.
you guys, everybody listening to this, we want you to subscribe too. And please, watch some of the content and
Yes.
comment. And I respond personally to every single comment. And sometimes we
Yes.
get a lot, but I respond to everybody. So I will
Okay.
respond to you too.
Right. Right. Exactly. You're out there. Again, thank you. It has been wonderful to talk to you.
It
And
really was
I'm
a
going to have
great
a link.
conversation.
Oh, no, this was great. This was fantastic. I love talking to the old school ghost hunters. That's what it is.
That's we
I'll have a link to your YouTube channel on the credits of the show. Okay.
That would be wonderful. I would really appreciate. Yeah, the ghosthunter.ws, that's our link tree, and that's
Yes.
fine because that goes to everything.
And
It
they'll
goes to
find you.
all our social media, our YouTube channel, everything. It's all through that.
You got it. Take care.
Thank you, Marlene.
Bye-bye. That was great. I love talking to Bobbie. You know what? And Bobbie was, let me not use the past and say it's a magician, but worked in, that understands the, what's this? Because you know that there's a lot of magicians that they're the first ones that poo-poo paranormal, that they all think everything is sleight of hand or one of those deals. Like, it's like you can't, like the Houdini approach, all these psychic phenomena, paranormal, supernatural stuff, it's all big head game. Because since they're masters of magic, that they say this is how easily you can trick somebody or make something appear this way when it's not really, it's just illusion. So, but still, that's what I'm saying. He has that background, but he's also to the paranormal work. And one of the things when you speak to him, you can really tell that and I don't know, I'm talking this based on my experience because I've dealt with a lot of ghost hunters, a lot, is you can tell that even that he has a certain standard, which I myself have, of what you're going to believe, whether it's your own material, what you see, or what somebody else brings. That it's not like, oh yeah, because I hunt ghosts and of course I believe you. Even when we were, remember, we've been around pre deep fakes, pre all the stuff that you can do now with AI. That still, even then, just because you're into paranormal research doesn't mean that you know how many times I always show pictures. Oh, do you see that at the window? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, it looks to me like the curtain. Oh no, because there's a figure there, and I'm like, I'm looking at it like, man, what am I missing? And to me, if I can't, again, I know that sometimes people say, okay, there's certain apparitions that look so solid they're mistaken for real people. There's others that are described like kind of see through, but that they're even sometimes even recognizable or whatever. Or you catch, maybe it's a moment and they're gone, but somebody's captured there. I mean, I've looked at so many pictures that it's like, I don't know. There's nothing here. This could be a shadow. This could be the curtain across the window. Again, my point being that he's a kind of researcher, which is not going to be like, oh, you're telling me, or that looks, not necessarily. Like, in other words, there's got to be some type of convincing evidence there of some type, whatever it is that is like not. I'm not going to automatically say, oh, that's. And the flip side of that is, and he was getting into it, and I should have asked him more about it. When you do this work for a while, especially in the later years that they have all the gadgets on the thing, besides the camera or the digital recorder, that they have the camera, the FLIR, this with the little sticks and all these gadgets. The best instrument is your body, the human body. And believe it or not, I proved this to myself and because because I would work with a foundation that they would bring in like different groups to work on certain investigations as to where it was in Florida or the availability. So, and most of them, as a matter of fact, as I was never big time into equipment. All I had originally was digital camera, digital recorder, an EMF detector. And of course, you have to be careful when you use that because, and dowsing rods. I was basic. So if any investigation we used any type of equipment, it was usually from that group. But by the way, they spent sometimes quite a bit of money. There would be times that I would say, there's something that's gonna come in the room, or I'd be like, I would feel it. I don't know, something. That's what I'm saying. When you know your body, or you trust, or you know how to interpret what your body's telling you, I'd be like, oh, something's happening. 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, that instrument, whatever it is that they were using, would go ding, ding, whatever it was. I remember after a while they'd look at me and they go, Marlene. And then, by the way, by this, I'm not saying I was special because I'm not. I'm not. It was like that after a while you develop an affinity and that you know how to interpret. In other words, I'm not getting my skin prickly because it's gotten cold, like it's in temperature drop. Like not paranormal temperature drop. It's just maybe temperature's dropped. Or maybe I'm standing under the AC vent. In other words, that's not what I'm reacting to. What I'm reacting to is something. And again, I tell anybody that's done this, most paranormal occurrences announce themselves. There's something that happens where it announces itself in the sense, like he was saying, sometimes sound silence, or I don't know how to explain this but there's like a thickness around, like in that, let's say you're in a room something thickens. I'm trying to explain it, and it's like something shifts, and sometimes we capture it with senses, whether it's with our ears, eyes, but there's something in us, our bodies, that if you know how to understand, you feel it, you realize what it is. Like, oh, okay, something's happening. There it comes, or here it is, or there it goes. Same thing. You know when it's going or when it's gone. That's it. Whatever was here is gone. And then all of a sudden, all the instruments go. Woo. That's what I'm saying. The best, in my experience, one of the best instruments we have is the human body, especially when you're true to interpreting what you feel and you're honest about, like, I'm cold just as because it's just gotten colder, not because there's a cold spot here, because there's some type of ghost here trying to, like, sucking the heat or whatever out of the no. Just the temperature dropped. Or for all you know, somebody went over to the thermostat and turned on the AC, or it cranked on, because a lot of times when we were doing investigations inside residential homes, we would ask the homeowner, please, can you turn the AC off? Just so that we wouldn't have that incident. But guess what? Sometimes they do, and it's they lowered it by maybe 3 or 4 degrees, and all of a sudden the temperature makes it turn on. And everybody's like, oh, it's gotten cold. No, it's the AC turned on. That kind of deal. So sometimes there's, as a matter of fact, there was a one time where they asked me to do an investigation, and they said, Marlene, can you please come in and wait a minute, hold on a minute. And how's this? I blurted something out, and I knew it, but I didn't know it. How's this? How can I say this? That sometimes when you're doing psychic investigations, you come across things, and you don't realize, especially when it's a sensitive situation. Let me see, hold on. In other words, and by the way, when I went on this, and this was, and let me tell you something, I was kind of shocked. Let me see if I can cue it up. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can cue it up for you guys. This was 8 years ago. How's that? This was 8 years ago. I'm going to show you. This is, let me see if I can get this. Share screen with this. Let me see if I can get this queued up. Okay, I had just gone outside. This was a house that had like a big lake canal, which is very common in South Florida. And I had gone out there. By the way, I'd never been this lady. The 2 investigators that took me there, they had on purpose, those little darlings, had not giving me a hint. And they were looking at me with this face later on like, Marlene. But here we go.
Okay. Because not in here, but out there in that yard, something happened, and I want to say it was probably a young teenage guy, like young, like 16 or what happened? What's wrong? Oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry. What happened? I know.
He had a seizure. And he got to near the water and had a seizure.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't be sorry.
I'm really sensitive about that. I'm sorry.
My son just passed away in October.
Okay.
He had a seizure and he drowned.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. Please don't. It just, wow, that kind of.
Okay. I feel like
It was.
How old was he?
He was 26.
Okay.
I have it right here.
Okay.
It was in the canal on 84 in Pine Island. He had a seizure and he fell in and he drowned.
Okay. That's what I was getting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm just crying out of just.
I know. Okay. All right. And that's why I asked you, because I know you said you had to leave the tier 8 years, so I was thinking, well, maybe this happened before we wouldn't know about it. You know, so I was like, okay, let me ask her. She might, or maybe she might have heard I didn't. But you know what? I feel like what's in here and him are two. Do you remember what I told you at the beginning when we started? It's like two separate things, like that they don't overlap, like two separate things. This is what's going on is.
Okay, there you go. That was me 8 years ago. And they called me and they asked me as a favor to do that investigation. And by the way, normally when I was doing investigations, I wasn't doing the psychic part. I was an investigator, as I'm a very analytical person, believe it or not. And sometimes that's the part that sometimes the psychics, that they get ambushed just the same way that what happened. That you're seeing this and you don't realize how close it is when you deliver that, how it affects them, because in other words, there's, and and part of me, because I'm thinking, oh my God, how can I have not known this, like somehow, like before I just blurted it out. And I'm going to say that sometimes it's almost like we're going to not let you know that you're going to tell her something about her child, because if you knew, you wouldn't say it. Okay. And I mean, that was a pretty long investigation. I was there for like a couple of hours or more. And by the way, when I got out of there, I was like, oh, my brain was like mush. In other words, for you that they want you to say it, and that if you know the circumstances, or that you're going to affect that other person, you might say, man, should I really say this? That kind of deal. My point being that sometimes, in other words, when I talk about these things with experiences that people have with discarnates or paranormal research, and what Bobbie Gallo was saying about that you have experiences that, forget I'm going to capture this for proof, or it's a photograph, or I've got a recording or an EVP or whatever, that there's something that you know that there's no way you could know. Or in other words, there was no way it could be manufactured. It wasn't your subconscious mind which had it. None of that. That proves that there is something beyond our physical existence on this plane. Right? Whether it's like what we were talking about, that, are you trapped? Is this what Catholics call purgatory? Is it, like he was saying, you're scared to go into the afterlife because maybe you were a son of a gun, And even though you say all your life you didn't believe in hell, all of a sudden maybe you do. Or you're confused, or you don't realize you're dead, or you don't want to accept you're dead. You know, like maybe you think, well, I cheated, or like what he was saying, I need to say something. I needed to clarify this. You know, sometimes some of these people that disappear, or they're done away with, or they just disappear for different reasons. You know, they went hiking, they fell down a ravine, and their family never finds them. That they have, in other words, that the ball and chain that ties them to this plane is that I want to tell my family, hey, I didn't disappear, or I didn't abandon you guys. Or by the way, this is what happened to me. You know, my body is down that, that ravine, or behind that rock, or, I fell in the river, and that kind of deal. Or, hey, I'm that John Doe they found 2 months later downstream from where I was camping at. That kind of deal. Because, and that's the thing, because I want to segue real quick into this, the true crime DNA thing, that now DNA is, solving all these cold cases and IDing victims, blah, blah, blah. You know what? If you don't find remains, there's nobody's going to ID nothing about nothing. And there's a lot of people that go missing. Let's take the, sometimes it is a murder. Sometimes there is foul play. Or sometimes mishaps. Stuff happens. That if you're hidden away so well and nobody finds your remains, there's no DNA to match to you for anything, for nothing. And sometimes I think certain people or spirits get tied because they want to go back to their family somehow and let them know this is what happened to me, or I'm okay. But a lot of times I think it has to be with I didn't abandon you, or look, I'm here. Like, in other words, maybe part of their loved one's anguish is that they don't have definite answers. There's that big question mark that it's like, yeah, we think this person, something bad happened to them, but we're not really sure. They kidnapped this person. Is he alive, or she's alive, and we don't know, and we need to rescue them, or that kind of scenario. And they feel that obligation, or they have children, or all the stuff that, as human beings, depending on your personality, like, worry you. And I think at some point, some of them, for lack of a better word, they make peace and they move on. But yeah, there's a lot what Bobbie was saying about people that don't want to think that this is it. Once you're done, that's it. Push up days and it's over. Because they don't even want to think about what is on the other side of this. Is it? It's really funny because, as a matter of fact, in this investigation that I did, just so happened that one of the, it wasn't, one of the ghosts that was there was someone she had known from before, somebody she had a relationship with, a very intense relationship, by the way. It wasn't like, oh, he was my boyfriend. No, it was a pretty intense relationship. And he had passed away. And she was looking, like, towards the end of his life. I really, I lost touch with him. I knew him, but not really. And I said, you know what? He's coming. He says he doesn't want to move on because he thinks heaven's a boring place. He says that all they're going to do is it's like sing hymns and, and be like angels. And to him, he was like, you could tell the way she was describing him. He was one of these like party guys, happy, and to him, heaven to him in his mind was, it's going to be a boring place. People are going to be running around just praying and singing like hymns and shit. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to, I don't want to go there. It's funny. They're like, well, that's a first. But anyway, guys, I hope you liked this interview with Bobbie Gallo. Please check out his YouTube channel. I'm going to put a link to it in the credits of the show. And I will be seeing you next week. I have a lot of good guests coming on. A lot of good guests. So don't forget to sign up for the newsletter at mppellicer.com. You can go to erie.news. Everything, there's links to everything there. All the podcasts, everything. So until next time, thanks for being part of my audience. You're wonderful.